It's the Sean Widmer Podcast. It's a journal by someone that just really doesn't like to write.
Thank you for tuning in to the Sean Widmer Podcast. It means a lot. As you can tell, if you are watching on YouTube, we are entering the end of our black eye era. Oh, hallelujah. We're there might be some beeping in the background here for a second. Oh, hang on. I'm recording this very, very, very early in the morning before my son wakes up. And so we're going to have a shorter podcast today, but his monitor is now, of course, the battery is dying as I'm hitting record. Now we're just you're living in a dad's life live, trying to get the podcast in. It will not be a long one today. I mentioned, though, we are entering the end of the black eye era. It's very nice because every comment that I've been getting, if you are watching on YouTube, is about how my wife hit me or what does the other guy look like or whatever it is. I'm ready to move on past those. I understand the jokes, but I'm ready for them to be done. So we are almost out of the black eye era and just into regular ugly face era. Ugly face with black eye era, not my favorite one. So today, there's going to be some parenting stuff. I've got a Kelly's What Are You Into that has taken me back a little bit. I don't know why I'm back into looking at this stuff, but it's led to me just going, man, I kind of miss this a lot. We'll see. We'll talk about that in a bit. And of course, we'll do your comments. If you want to interact with the show, you can. You can comment. We read them at the end of the podcast. You can do that on YouTube if you're watching there. You can go to my website, seanslife.com. There's a big comment box there. Or you can, if you're listening on Spotify, they've got a cool option where you can make a comment on the episode you are listening to, and that comes to me as well. We do those, like I said, at the end of the pod. Couple parenting things, though, real quick to get this show started before Kelly's What Are You Into? We have hit booger time at the Widmer household. My daughter has figured out that boogers are coming out of her nose, and she is in love with them, and it is disgusting and kind of hilarious, but mainly disgusting. She is so proud of her boogers. Again, she realized the other day that, she put her finger up there, and just a monster booger, just gross, came out, and she was, it's going to go one of two ways. She was either going to be disgusted and irritated by it, or she was going to think it was the funniest thing in the world. And she went with the funniest thing in the world. And so now she's obsessed with picking these boogers out, running to the nearest parent, showing us the booger, and just laughing her head off. And I'm like, oh boy. The problem with it is, there's a lot of problems. One, this is not something I need to be happening out and about. I can't get the call from the teacher that's like, hey, Olivia's at the playground just showing boogers all the time to people. The other problem, though, she has become obsessed with just putting boogers everywhere in our house. And it is disgusting. As her brother says, and she has taught him this, it's disgusting. One of my favorite things that little guy says. It's disgusting. I need to record him saying it and get it on the podcast because it's really cute and just very unfortunate that it has come about to describe the boogers all over our house. But they're everywhere now. We live in a booger house. I don't know if this is a normal thing to go through as a parent, but we are in it, and no matter where I am, I've got to walk around now with a wet wipe and just kind of have one in my pocket at all times. I've got wet pockets all the time because I'm searching the house looking for where did Olivia put the latest booger? What wall is it on? What cup is it on? Where is it on the couch? Where is it? But she's just putting them everywhere, hiding them all over. So we're here. We've got booger time at the Widmer house. I don't know how long booger time lasts. I really hope that Olivia gets over it before she can teach her brother how this all works. And maybe he'll skip it altogether. That would be great. I wanted to make an observation on something that I've been seeing. I see it on TikTok from time to time. I see it on Instagram Reels. I get a lot of the parenting advice posts. I get a lot of the things of describing that if you yell at your kids, they're not going to be happy about it. Thank you. I never would have thought that without the help of TikTok. I appreciate that. But you get a lot of the parenting things where people want to tell you how to parent. They just love it. They want to always help you out. And one of the things that I see is, feed your kids what you eat. Feed your kids what you eat. Make them eat what you eat. I can't tell you how against this I am. I don't want to see any more of it. Maybe someone's watching at our house, and that's why they're coming up on my feed all the time. I'm always making separate meals. If I'm making dinner, I'm making something different for Anna and me than I am for the kids. And I think Anna does that a lot too. Because with kids, the goal for me as a 42-year-old man with metabolism ending at a drastic pace, is I want to make sure whatever my kids are eating is gone when dinner's done. Because if it's not, I'm eating it. So all the smarty pants out there who are like, feed your kid what you eat. My kids don't eat it. Then they go out and play, and I'm looking at the food. I'm not going to throw food away. I'm not a food waster. So I've got one of two options. One, I eat it right there, and now I've had 2 dinners, and it shows. Or I put it in a Tupperware, save it for the next day. Take it out the next day, reheat it. Guess what? They don't eat it then either. I'm eating it either way. So for those of you who are like, well, you can save it and give it to them tomorrow, I'm eating that food no matter what, because whenever I reheat it, it's coming to me. So I need to be done with that. I'm a firm believer in take the time to make your kids a meal they are going to eat all of for your health as a parent. The amount of double meals I've eaten over the past 3 months is insane. It's insane. There will be the night where my kids eat their mac and cheese, and I'm so thankful, because then I'm not. But the night they get up off the table, they're like, look, Dad, today, I know we played all day and we are exhausted and we've got to be starving. I'm not eating anything tonight. I'm like, well, okay, cool. I get my dinner and I get mac and cheese. Wonderful. Oh, you guys didn't want your fish sticks? Thank goodness, a little dessert for Dad. But I just shout out to the TikTok people who are trying to teach me how to parent and giving extremely terrible advice. They're just fattening me up. It's almost a little concerning how much the TikTokers out there are trying to fatten all of us parents up by making us pretend like our kids are going to eat the food that we're going to eat, and then we eat all of theirs and ours and everything in the world. And it's not fun, guys. So there you go. There's my little shout out to the parents out there. And just for those of you who are struggling with that also, know that I'm in the boat with you. We are all about nuggets, mac and cheese, butter noodles with Parmesan cheese, fish sticks, whatever the doggone kids will eat. That's where we're living.
Kelly's, what are you into?
Let's do it, shall we? Kelly's, what are you into? I'm into something that I used to be into all the time. Every day for the longest time, I would wake up. I had the same routine when I was working on the morning show of getting prepped for the show by just looking around, making sure I'm not missing any big headlines during the day. And I had stopped doing that because I wasn't doing the morning show. Well, suddenly the last couple of weeks, I've kind of been enjoying. This is also getting old, right? My metabolism is ending, and I'm loving looking at news stories in the morning. I don't know if there's much more old than that. Get a cup of coffee and look at news stories so I can shout at the clouds and yell at kids to get off my lawn. Now, I will give myself a little bit of credit. I'm not diving into the front page of the New York Times and reading all the political stuff. I'm still going to the weird news stories. And I had been out of that game for a very long time, and I remember why I liked it so much. For instance, today, I go to anything that has weird news. I type in like weird news stories on Google, and I go to those sites, and I just read weird stuff. Again, that's what I've been into. But I was looking at one the other day, and I wanted to see more about this story about a gal in Nebraska who had pumped $27,000 of gas over 6 months for free. She was putting in there was a glitch with the pump, and you'd put in your rewards number, and it would send the gas pump into some kind of demo mode. And as long as you didn't it was asking you to put your credit card in. If you didn't do that, you could pump the gas. And so over the course of 6 months, she pumped 74,000 gallons of gas, $27,000 worth of gas for free. Now, it's not going to be free now because she's in trouble for it. And, excuse me, she is charged on one count of theft, by unlawfully taking $5,000 or more dollars of a product. So she's going to be in a bit of trouble. This is not going to end well for her, even though she was allowed, even though it was a glitch with the pump. You can't steal gas. She was released from jail after paying $7,500 bond. And so now she's going to go to court in April. I think she actually had to pay for the bond. I don't think she had a glitch to get out of that one. But I'm looking at that story, and right next to it are the kind of headlines that just used to make me so excited to see. Here are the ones. This was a shout out to my daughter, Olivia, who's been up in her nostril cavities a lot, pulling out the big bugs. We got the guy in Florida, and this is just the thing that shows. If you need to get out of the politics stuff and the news stories that might make you crazy and maybe make you fight people at work, I mean, we're going to get into fight people here in just a second. We're going to get into that. There was a story about a guy in Florida who had 150 live bugs in his nose, dozens of larvae reportedly feeding on the man's nose and sinus cavity, some as big as the end of his pinky. Huge bugs, 150 bugs in this guy's nose, right? That's a story that I used to love. Texas man accused of putting antiques up his kilt-covered butt. There's a headline for you. Guy goes into a store with a kilt, walks out with a bunch of things up his butt. Makeup brush, antique bottle opener, a little over $200 worth of items. They were thrown away because of fecal contamination. This is a gross episode of the podcast today. I'm realizing that. Boogers, fecal contamination, bugs up a nose. You can tell where I'm at right now. We're in the middle of it. We're in the middle of grossness here. Freed on a $100 bond, so a little bit better. Had a little less money to pay. I don't want to know where his wallet was to pay that bond, but probably wasn't the greatest wallet in the world. But these are the kind of stories that I just love. And so I'm back into this. I'm back into loving looking at weird news stories while I sit on my couch in the morning, kids running around like crazy, begging me to turn on any kind of Lightning McQueen-related television program, and I can sit there with my coffee and just read weird news stories. I don't know that I will eventually transition into being the guy that just reads the newspaper in the morning, but I'm assuming this is the first step towards that. Enjoying reading news stories in the morning. I'll tell you what I haven't been reading, the sports section. I don't like that. Eastern loses over the weekend. Talked about that on Monday. Gonzaga men and women lose yesterday in the WCC championship games. Not fun. Got together with my buddy Sir Rob last night. Watched the Gonzaga game. It was depressing. He had a bunch of money on the Zags. I had a bunch of emotions on the Zags. So we both left unhappy with ourselves. Speaking of unhappy, the Beast reared its head in Lexington on Monday night. I have been known from time to time on the basketball court to be a little irritable, and I've been known from time to time on the basketball court to get into it with people. But I'd put that person behind me in my early 30s, and in my 20s I could just be a jerk. I know this, and I don't think I have been as much recently. I turned my basketball game into more fun than anger. I think Darnay was the last person to really take my wrath on a regular basis. But I had basketball on Monday night, and Lexington has now seen it, and we'll see if I'm invited back. I got into that mode. I brought in all the non-basketball stuff to the basketball court. Anything that was bothering me in life went straight to the court. I could tell it when I got there, and sure enough, I got on a team with guys who were irritating me a bit. I was not playing great. We had a lot of guys who were just shooting a lot of shots before passing the ball, which drives me crazy. And we were just losing game after game. And I finally just had a meltdown and had some moment and some words about how much our team sucked to my teammates. Now, I wasn't like singling out anyone because I included myself in this, but just a nice little blow up, making sure that everyone knew that we suck and doing it very vocally and in a very, very embarrassing way to the point where I had to send the group text out later that night like, hey, sorry, guys. Probably shouldn't have done that. So that Lexington has now seen it. They've now seen the basketball Sean Widmer that I know a lot of Spokane had seen and was familiar with. It's made its way east, and now it's firmly planted its flag as you're that guy on the basketball court. Next week I'm going to have to rally. Next week is going to have to be the nicest I've ever been in my life in basketball, regardless of if we're winning or losing by 18. Next week is going to be the most complimentary Sean Widmer that has ever walked on the basketball court. All right, let's do it. Let's get to the comments, wrap up the podcast today. You can comment on YouTube, Spotify, or on my website, shawnslife.com, where Ian said this: never have I ever seen such blatant favoritism against the Zags. I'm not excusing Zags fouls, but the fact that they were just blatantly ignoring St. Mary's was beyond ridiculous. And then the commentators were just, wow. I get you have a job and ESPN dictates things, but call a spade a spade. It did seem like there was some moments where there's some interesting foul calls. I did notice some that Gonzaga got away with, but yeah, I did notice that. My main problem, Ian, with that game yesterday was Gonzaga's got guys that have to show up in March that didn't show up, and you just are not going to win unless everyone shows up. You're just not going to win. It happened with Eastern on Sunday, and it happened yesterday with Gonzaga. Nolan Hickman, I'm looking at you. 0 for 3 from 3, 3 from 8 from the field. Can't happen. Can't happen in March. Your guards have to play well. The team can't shoot 18% from 3. 18% from three. That was the Gonzaga's three-point shooting numbers. Nembhard was 1 for 3. Braden Huff 0 for 1. Ben Gregg 1 for 2. Anton Watson 0 for 2. Like I said, Nolan Hickman 0 for 3. You can't have 2 3-pointers. You cannot expect to win games in March making 2 3-pointers. I don't think you're going to see one team win a tournament game with 2 threes. Not going to happen. Not in today's game. You have to hit threes. And so last night was just an embarrassing performance shooting the basketball from deep for the Zags, and they had open looks, so it wasn't like St. Mary's was going out of their mind with defense. I thought Gonzaga had some good-looking 3-pointers. Nolan Hickman airballed one of them. Wide open airball. Can't happen. So I get it. Maybe the officiating wasn't what you wanted. Zags lose by 9. The game was closer than that for a while, and when they needed big buckets, they just couldn't get them. You got to be able to score those. Graham Ike with 10 points. He's going to need to have more than that in March. Anton was great, 18 points. He knew what was on the line. He played, I thought, very well. But that was a bummer game for the Zags last night. Oh, my gosh. Yvonne said this, double dipping. Okay, so she's got comments 2 places. She said, just wanted to say thank you for letting me know Matty Matheson has a YouTube. Love him. He was hilarious on the Bear. And his YouTube's very funny. Again, NSFW, but very funny. Also, it's like a cooking show where every time he cooks something, I go, I have none of those ingredients and no way of making that. So it's more you just watch it for the lulz. Scotty says this, nobody cares about college basketball during NFL free agency. Bronco Nation, hear us roar. The Russell Wilson to Pittsburgh thing is hilarious. The amount of NFL stuff that happened the last 2 days was wild. I also didn't realize I realized that Derrick Henry went to the Ravens. I didn't realize how the world thinks Derrick Henry is washed up. I always assumed Derrick Henry was going to be a big name wherever he went, but people were like, yeah, he's washed. I think Derrick Henry in Baltimore could be a bigger deal than a lot of the people are making it out to be. That's a really big dude who can run the ball pretty well on an offense that didn't really, really, really need a great running back because Lamar's so good. Excuse me. I think the Ravens are going to be solid again. Scotty says top 5 sandwiches. Number 1, PB and honey. Can't argue with that. Number 2, honey and cheese. Number 3, ice cream sandwich. Number 4, peanut butter and chocolate. Number 5, cheese and chocolate. P.S. I love the guest idea. I would be an awesome first guest, just saying. Thank you, Scotty. If there is somebody out there who eats a honey and cheese sandwich, besides Scotty, you can probably stop listening to the podcast and go to a doctor. Billy says this over on, let's see, I think he's got one on YouTube and he's got one on Spotify. Let's go with his Spotify one because it's the one I see first. He says, I miss the sports show we used to have here in Spokane, like Patch and Luke and Zanoso, and of course, everyone's favorite, The Locker Room with Slim and Dan Dickow. Okay, a couple things, Billy. Thank you. I actually called Dennis Patchen this week. I was talking to Dennis Patchen this week on the phone. I wanted to get his opinion on some Eastern basketball stuff. It was great to talk to him. I cannot believe Spokane does not have a local sports show. It's insane to me. This would have been an unbelievably fun week for it with WSU, Gonzaga, and Eastern all in conference tournaments in a good position. Would have been a fun week for that. And, of course, all of March where you're going to be following Gonzaga and WSU through March Madness. I can't believe Spokane doesn't have a local sports show. It's crazy to me. Second of all, Billy, that was a double shout-out by you by a couple different shows that I did. Slim and Dickow, that show is just called the Dickow and Slim Show. The Locker Room, props to you for bringing that one up. That was one of my old sports shows. The Locker Room with Sean Widmer. What a time. What a time. Was The Locker Room with Toby and Bob. I took over The Locker Room with Sean Widmer. Oh, man. Love that. All right, thank you, Billy, for that comment. Let's head over to YouTube, where Roberta says this, I watched some of the Eagles game, but my app kept rewinding, showing the same 3 seconds, then advancing 20 to 30 seconds. I finally had to turn it off, but it didn't look good. It wasn't good, Roberta. You did not miss a lot. You missed a lot of heartbreak. That's what you missed. Gotta love an app that just isn't keeping up with it whenever you need to watch a game, and it glitches out on you. It's so frustrating. But yeah, Roberta, you did not miss much. And I talked to enough people. The text on Monday I was talking about where people were calling for David Riley. I talked to enough people this week, former players and some people at Eastern in the athletics department who are like, David's the dude. So I needed a little reassurance that I wasn't wrong because I love David Riley. The former players and some people that I talked to at Eastern are also in love with him. So to those of you who want his head on a silver platter, you're not going to get it. And I'm thankful for that. Thanks for tuning in, Sean Widmer Podcast. Again, if you'd like to help the podcast out, go to YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel. click like on it, whatever, all the things they tell you to do on YouTube. I'd very much appreciate it. Thanks so much for tuning in.